All right. This week is all about relationships. We're in the third quadrant, that is the lower left hand corner. Um, and again, remember, all this is going to tie into the other quadrants as well. So, uh, we want to create strong connections, and it really starts with aligning our perception with reality. Now, the thing about reality is we don't experience it the way that people typically do. You may already be hip to this, but we're going to go over it anyway. Now, our reality is primarily shaped by the mind plus the sense organs. And our experience is a perception of our relationships, the thoughts, emotions, the body, and our environment. So, really, what we're experiencing when we're taking in information around thoughts, we're taking in information around our emotions, we're taking in all the sense organs, and we're making meaning of it, right? We're not actually uh, aware of everything that's coming in. And so, uh, what we need to do is we need to accept that our experience that we're having is not reality. We just need to accept that. So, the work that we're going to be doing is we're shifting our perception in a way that shapes reality. So, the term perception is reality is incorrect. Perception is perception, and reality is reality. Uh, Really simple when you hear it, but the truth is the way you're perceiving the world is not what's actually happening. However, the way in which you perceive the world is going to shape how reality plays out. And so we're going to shift our perception into a direction that we want it to go. So we're working on improving our relationship to ourselves and to the rest of the world in a way that it creates the reality that we desire. But first, the most powerful place to create from is from nothing. So none of those stories, none of those thoughts, emotions. It is to create from. When I say nothing, I mean everything. I mean actual reality. And so this is a slide that Mark Passio used in one of his presentations that really stuck with me, and I felt like it explained frequency, vibration, things like that much better than anything I've ever heard before. And so the idea is, we may have heard, oh, that I'm a high vibe person. I only hang out with high vibe people, or, I'm at a higher frequency, or I'm raising the frequency of my consciousness. And usually people are referencing getting into a bliss state or something like that, which is great, but it's not necessarily being in touch with reality. And so when I talk about reality, I'm really referring to the truth, what is. Really, like everything that is reality. Everything that is and ever has been and ever will be is the truth. And so the problem is that we're walking through the world out of touch with actual reality. We're really in touch with our perception. So the work that we're doing, and we're going to be doing this in this course, is we are going to increase our frequency. And that means that we are going to increase the frequency in which we interact with reality. So we can see here that this person, this sine wave right here, is a low frequency sine wave. And because of that, it is not interacting with reality that often. So let's just pretend like this is a day in time, which for most people, what would be more realistic is probably a year. But we'll pretend like it's a day. And in a given day, someone of low frequency is going to interact with reality 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And a lot of times they're interacting with a form of reality where they may have already done some work and they're not triggered and they're able to be with what is. Uh, but the rest of the time, they're living in their perception. They're living in the dream state. Now, we want to increase our frequency. What we need to do is increase the frequency in which we interact with reality. So we move up, we increase our frequency 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. So this person's of a higher frequency. And then, of course, above that in the top line is someone of the highest frequency. This is somebody that is in alignment with what is, and they are stabilizing that much more frequently than somebody down in the red here. So we want to be the blue. And eventually, if you want to be enlightened, you would completely stabilize reality. And I hear it's a pretty peaceful place. I've only made short visits there. So all this leads, you're going to see me quote Mark Twain. If you've been following me very long, you probably already know I'm a fan. And so there's many reasons which I will not get into in today's course, but he said something really, he says things really plainly that I like. And this quote, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." So he's basically saying that there are things that people believe to be absolutely true, which aren't, and those things will get you in trouble. And so my hope for you as we go through this course is that you become much more aligned with reality, the reality you're experiencing, and you're able to actually rub off on some other people and they get to experience a greater reality too. By the way, reality is not always comfortable. Actually, it's rarely comfortable. And we're in a point on the planet right now where there is more communication, more networking, more sharing information than there ever has been. And people may think that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. But I believe that we just have way more awareness of what's already been happening. So it's not always a friendly thing to visit, but if you can get comfortable, you can get comfortable with reality, and that means that you have to go through some uncomfortable things. You're going to live a much more peaceful life long term. So one way I like to think about this is suffering occurs when you're in an argument with reality. That's a quote from Werner Erhard. He was the founder of EST, which later became Landmark Curriculum, and it's a leadership training. And I just think it's so right, and it's a good phrase for me to bring back in my own life anytime I am experiencing suffering. Is when am I feeling that anxiety, depression? When do I worry? When do I hold regret? And I go, wow, it's really, am I in an argument with reality? Am I wishing reality, what is existing right now in this moment, to be different? Do I wish the past was different? Do I wish right now was different? And if I'm in that place, that means that I am suffering. And if you're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, that's not reality yet. So that's also potentially going to cause you some suffering. So anytime we're in a place of emotional discomfort or mental anguish, we get to ask ourselves, what am I in an argument with? What do I wish to be different? And so I've got another way of talking about this for the engineering minded types. I really like this one personally. And this is going to land for different people differently. But this is a formula that was dropped on me by one of my mentors, Mark Gaffney. And he said, pain times resistance equals suffering. And what I've added to that is curiosity is the answer to resistance. So if you're experiencing pain and you resist the pain, that's what causes the suffering. Pain is always going to be there. It's always going to be present. Life is going to be full of discomfort. And the amount of suffering we experience is totally based on how much resistance we have to that pain, whether it be physical, mental, emotional. And our work is to, if we can turn that resistance down to zero, then the suffering dissipates and the pain is just a signal. And so if we think about that as we're doing when we're thinking about this slide right here, where we're increasing the frequency that we interact with reality and we're stabilizing that frequency, because there's one thing to visit it and there's another thing to have stabilized it. So if we can stop resisting what is true, this line here in the middle, then we can reduce or eliminate suffering altogether. So uh, I have yet to meet anybody who still has overcome suffering 100%. But I'll tell you what, I have witnessed a lot of people who don't suffer very much. Truth be told, I don't suffer nearly as much as I used to, and it's the application of formulas like this that got me there. So, what we're going to be doing today in this week, and I want you to keep in mind, is one of the things that keeps us from being in right relationship with reality or the truth is that we think we already know what's true. So going back to that Mark Twain quote, we already think we know what's true. And so what I like to do is I like to soften up my own psyche a bit. And I like to admit that I don't know. And one of the ways to do that is I really work hard to stay away from making statements to myself or other people that I absolutely know that something is true. And that is because once the mind has attached itself to something being true, you move into a mindset of being fixed. So you've probably heard of like fixed mindset and growth mindset. Well, this is one hack on way to get there because people talk about growth mindset and fixed mindset, and they're like, okay, I'm going to be growth mindset. It's like, well, just telling yourself that isn't necessarily that helpful. If it was, I think we'd all be in a better spot. But one of my little hacks to get there is I imagine that I never know the truth, but my job is to find more and more accuracy. And I might know one side of the truth, but I may not know the second, third, fourth, every angle of the truth. So my interaction with reality is coming from a place of wanting to find more accuracy, and by finding accuracy, we can always become more accurate. And so that puts us in a more of a process oriented mental space. So thinking we already know what's true puts us fixed, doesn't allow us to take in new, uh, truthful information. But when I'm looking for accuracy, I'm always looking to get better. And so when we're in relationship with other people, if we really work towards becoming more accurate and we forget about the truth, we're going to be in a lot better place. So, um, we're going to be moving into an exercise, and this is a framework that we're going to be using through the rest of the course. If you haven't figured it out already, we're going to be layering things in, and we're going to be working on creating an accurate reporting of your experience. So not only are you working on becoming more in touch with reality yourself, but you're going to be coming in touch with other people's reality, other people's perceptions, their perspectives, and you're going to be able to help. You can start deconstructing what is actually happening for you in your experience. But the really cool ninja move is that you're going to be able to deconstruct other people's experience of the world, and you don't even have to tell them about it. Now, I actually encourage you to not. Um, so many times people get into this information and they start sharing it with people, and then 2 weeks later they're almost like blown away that people don't get this. They didn't take the course. So give them a little bit of give them some compassion. Practice being graceful in how you interact with people. And so uh, as you have uh, already noticed, I like to divide things up. I divide them, I love them, and we put them back together. We integrate them. So we're going to divide our experience of the world into three different categories. So what we notice, what we imagine, and what we feel. Now, let's focus in on the noticing. We're going to be creating an accurate reporting of what I am noticing. So what you can notice is inarguable and objective. And so what I mean by that is no matter what, people who are watching this video are going to be looking at me and saying, Mike has got some gray headphones on. Great. That's something that's inarguable. If someone were to counter that, that'd be ridiculous. It's fairly objective. There's no story about it. What you notice, the best way for me to remember this and keep this at the top of my mind is it's inarguable. It would be ridiculous for somebody to report differently. The funny thing is a lot of people walk around acting as though things are inarguable when there's an argument actively happening in it. And so this assumption that we know what's true, even in the space of argument, means that somebody, at least one person, is mixing up what they notice with what they imagine. So, which brings us to this next stage, imagination. And so I like to look at the words of I think, I feel like, I believe. These are sentence stems. These are the start of sentences that end in describing what it is that our imagination is doing. And I really like the phrase I imagine versus I think, I feel like, or I believe, because I am admitting first to myself, I'm softening up my psyche. I am softening up for myself and admitting that what I think, feel like, or believe is actually just my imagination. It's not actual reality. It's just what I imagine. And so first, I loosen it up on myself, because if we can loosen up our grip on the psyche, that's going to help us relieve that suffering, right? The other thing is it invites challenge from other people. When I say I imagine, they're way less likely to believe what I say, because what ends up happening is people generally want to be agreeable, so they won't disagree with you on your inaccurate reporting of reality. And so this is what helps create the grand illusion that everyone's living in, and why there's so much argument is because people aren't admitting when they're talking about imagination, which isn't real, which doesn't exist in physical reality. And they are gallivanting around as if it was something they would notice. It would be inarguable. So and one of the phrases I'll point out here is I feel like, which takes us into our next slide, where we're going to be talking about I feel. Now, if the phrase I feel like comes up and then you describe a thought, that is actually a way of being inauthentic. And that is you're not you're sneaking in the imagination with feelings, because the thing is, we as humans, if you're not a sociopath, you care about how someone else feels. And you'll get through this exercise how when you share your feelings, people won't actually argue with you. It'll bring you much closer together. But the problem is a lot of times when I say, how do you feel about that? Or what are your feelings? People will say, I feel like. So if I feel is followed by like, it usually then dumps into imagination land and not into the actual feeling. So if I say I feel, I'm going to name sensations in the body. I feel a soft seat under my butt. I feel my foot against the wall and my foot propped up. I feel a warmth moving from my chest through my throat, which makes sense because I'm talking. But we could also be talking that's sensations in the body, but there's also emotions. And emotions is really just energy in motion. So a lot of people talk about energy and this and that. And the word emotion comes from the Latin word emotere, which simply means energy in motion. And so those emotions that are running, you could name them, you could label them. You can say, I'm sad, I am happy, I feel anger in my chest. You can name where the emotion is living in your body, which I think is really good. So as we're going through this, if the emotions aren't as obvious to you yet, because the emotions are, that energy is flowing through your channels, it's flowing through your body all the time, and it's always changing and shifting. So it's there, but it's not always noticeable because we have put so much emphasis on our thoughts. We were sat down in school and told that our thoughts are more important than what we feel or our physical body. So there's a lot of training that has trained us away from being in touch emotionally, and we can still work on that. So it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to take care of this right now. So we're going to be using the sentence stem I feel and then naming sensations in the body or the emotion. And if you can name the emotion and the location that you're experiencing it, that's even better. So we're going to be going through an exercise, and anyone you do this exercise with, I welcome you to review this beforehand. You may not need to review the entire presentation, but when I started talking about this part, and I want you to do it with your classmates. We're going to do it on a coaching call, and we're going to later on. You're going to do this with some of your friends and family. So it's good to really understand this as deeply as possible, so that when you do the exercises, you're getting the most out of it as possible. And by the way, you can do this exercise as much as you want with as many people as you want. We are going to set a minimum of how many people you're going to interact with and all that, and make some suggestions. I'm not going to force you to do anything, but this is a really cool place to get to know people. And so what you're going to do is you're going to spend 2 minutes per person on each in order. And so what that looks like is I'm going to spend 2 minutes. So I'm partnered up. Say Jared and I are partnered up, and we're going to set a timer for 2 minutes. I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to say, I notice that your hair goes beyond your shoulders. I notice that you have a really dope background. Actually, that would be an imagination because I'm making a judgment about it. Or, I imagine, see, I'm already screwing it up. That's how it works. I imagine, or Jared might be imagining about me, there's a painting behind me. You're wearing headphones, you're wearing glasses. These are all things that would be, I notice. So you're going to spend 2 minutes noticing. The timer will go off. Stop the timer, start again. The other person will notice things. And I encourage you to notice things about the room, but also notice things about the other person. If they have a tattoo, say that you notice the tattoo, but stay away from commenting on if you like it or not, right? Because that's when we start getting into imagination. Or if you start assuming that somebody was late today because of, that would be an imagination. Being late is what you notice, but everything else that happens after that person being late and what you imagine is happening for them, that's not an I notice. You're going to say, I notice. You're going to name the thing, and then you're going to go back and say, I notice, and name the thing. If you find yourself using words like because, or you're running on and on with the conversation, you're likely have drifted off into imagination land. So you're going to spend 2 minutes per person with I notice. Then you'll move into the imagination, and you're going to simply say, I imagine. Now you can imagine something about the other person. You can imagine there's a pink unicorn running through the room right now. I welcome that. But I really find that to get the most out of this exercise is imagine what life is like for the other person. You can imagine if they had siblings. You can imagine what they do for work. You can imagine what is happening for them emotionally. But here's the thing: it's your imagination, so you can say whatever you want, because we're all admitting that this is not true. This is simply just thoughts that are passing through the mind and may not even be yours, right? So, uh, I, you'll find where certain parts of your imagination get uncomfortable, comfortable, whatever. So you're gonna do 2 minutes per person there. So you'll go, the other person goes, and then you'll move into the final round of the sentence stems, and you're going to say, I feel. And you're 2 minutes per person. I feel warmth in my chest. I feel a soft cushion below my butt. I already said some of the feeling stuff. So those are sensations. I feel happiness in my heart, whatever it is. Those are also, so I feel, name a sensation in the body or an emotion. And if you add the location, that's extra credit. 2 minutes per person on that one. So it's two, 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 two. So we're at a total of 12 minutes in exercise. So spend 2 minutes per person on each in order. So both of you do, I notice, both of you do, I imagine, and then both of you do, I feel. And then we're going to move. This really sets us up to play the curiosity game. I really like doing the I notice, I imagine, I feel with people before doing the curiosity game. If we're in a teaching environment, but the curiosity game can be played at any time with anybody without any training. They don't need to know what you're doing. You can just whip it out. So one of the coaches that used to work for us, he went to a party at a gym in which he knew nobody. He knew one person that brought him. He showed up and he left the party being like the life of the party and didn't tell people hardly anything about himself. They didn't know anything about him, but they loved him. The reason was because he made it his goal to play the curiosity game with every person at the party that night. So you're going to be you're likely going to be surprised at how deep you get with somebody in as little as 5 minutes. And there's levels to this game, which we're going to get into later in the course, but we're going to be playing at the white belt level first. So it's really simple. The way it works is the first person asks questions and the other person answers the questions for 5 minutes. The key here is the person that's asking the questions will not respond. You're not acknowledging. You're not going to say, oh, that happened to me too. Oh, I've also got a brother. You're not going to say any of that stuff. You're simply going to ask the questions and the other person's going to answer, and they don't get to ask you questions back. Now, if the person who's being asked questions doesn't want to answer that question, they can simply say thank you. And like pass. And then if you want them to basically shut up and you want to hear something else because you're not curious about what they're talking about anymore, you can say thank you. So I want you to notice the urge to agree or disagree. Notice the urge to tell a similar story. And I want you to really work on letting it pass and keep asking questions and remaining in that curiosity. And this is why this is relational meditation, is because the telling of a similar story or agreeing or disagreeing creates that attachment, that clinging that can result in suffering. So we're going to do a relational meditation where you're going to let that person's experience pass through you, and you're going to let go of all those things and just remain curious. And so the better you can do this with other people, the better you're going to be able to do it with yourself as well. So this is just a quick summary on the relational meditation. 2 minutes per person, I notice. 2 minutes per person, I imagine. 2 minutes per person, I feel. And then a 5 minute per person practice curiosity. You can do play this relational meditation game with somebody in less than 30 minutes. Now, if you're going to show them this video and give them more context, it might take longer, but you get what I'm saying here. So one thing we're going to do this week is we're going to practice on the coaching call. I highly recommend you get on the coaching call this week because we are going to facilitate this in a very unique way that's a little different than I presented it right here. So even if you don't get to make it, I recommend you watch the coaching call video that occurs. And if you cannot make the coaching call, coordinate with someone in the group to do this one-on-one over Zoom. So find somebody in the group, schedule a time, and do it one-on-one with them. And I recommend doing that as early in the week as possible. All right, y'all. Love y'all, and I'll see you soon.